So today I wanted to talk about how narcissists isolate their victims. We know that narcissists isolate their victims, but how they do it can often fly under the radar. And it can be very misunderstood because the reality is that a covert narcissist will never, ever tell you to not spend time with somebody. Or if they try that tactic and they realize that it only pushes you closer to other people, they'll reverse it. And their words will say one thing and their actions will say another. And before you know it, you've cut off all support outside of the narcissistic relationship. So it happens subtly. What they're doing can often fly under the radar. And if you've been in narcissistic relationships where this has happened before, the last thing you want to do is have it happen again. So I want to discuss 3 tactics covert narcissists use to isolate you from outside support. For those that don't know me, my name is Michele. I'm a trauma-informed coach. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner, and I'm the founder of the School of Transformation, which to me is like nervous system rehab, where I meet live weekly on Zoom with survivors from all over the world of emotional trauma. And together we do the inner work to heal from past trauma, and we learn how to embody the healing journey instead of just learning about it intellectually. So if that's something that could be of use for you, make sure you check out the links. So remember, narcissistic isolation is a gradual thing. It does not happen overnight. So it's very much like the frog. You put a frog in boiling water and it jumps out, but put a frog in cold water and slowly turn up the temperature. And it's not the most pleasant thing to think about, but the idea is that it doesn't notice the temperature change and then winds up getting boiled to death. And that's what it can feel like in a narcissistic relationship. You don't realize something is happening until it's too late. And that's what we want to change. And narcissistic isolation is one of the most common strategies that narcissists use to maintain their control. By cutting off their support system, they make sure that their victim becomes more dependent on them. This type of isolation can be emotional, it can be social, even physical. But how do they do it? So let's explore 3 of the tactics that they use. So first up is by devaluing your relationships. You see, narcissists know that if they directly tell you to not spend time with anybody but them, they know that doesn't look good. They know that that's not a healthy behavior. But if they can get you to reach that conclusion on your own and make that decision to cut yourself off from everyone but them, then they're extremely happy because they're controlling you behind the scenes and you don't even know it. So how do they do that? One of the things they may start doing is pointing things out as if they care about you, but the other person doesn't. So they might say things like, oh, they did that. They don't really care about you. They're using you. Or some weird implication that the other person has a negative motive when it's really them that has the negative motive, but they'll project that onto the other person and try to find things that they can point out so that you start viewing the other person in a negative light. And one of the weird ways that they devalue relationships is, let's say the person you're in a relationship with, it could be a family member, it could be a significant other, but let's say this other person is noticing some controlling behavior by the narcissist and starts kind of pointing it out. Well, then the narcissist will say something like, they're just trying to ruin our relationship. They're jealous of our relationship. Like, you have to be careful of that person because they're just so jealous of our relationship that they're causing problems. Now, it's really the reverse, but again, it plants doubt in another person's mind. And what they're hoping is that that doubt grows to the point that you begin looking at the other relationship as if that's the problem and you cut off the relationship. And the narcissist doesn't have to do a thing. Just plant that doubt in your head. And when a narcissist is devaluing your other relationships, it can be really hard to spot. And that's because oftentimes their words sound so good. They really do. The narcissist can sound like they really care. They care so much about you. They care so much about the other person. They care so much about your relationship. Their words say that. And yet after every conversation with them, what you'll notice if there's a narcissist devaluing your relationship, what you will begin to notice is that after you converse with the alleged narcissist, you will feel great with the narcissist. You might even be viewing them as, wow, like what a great person, like they're so supportive, but you suddenly start viewing your other relationships in a negative light. If that is consistently happening in your life, this person is intentionally causing you to question those around you. And before you know it, you might begin pulling away from people. And done over a period of time, it's like you never get close to anybody but the narcissist. The second tactic that they use to isolate their victims is through creating drama and triangulation. Unlike most people, narcissists thrive and flourish when there is drama and chaos. Narcissists love to create tension between their targets and other people. This is a tactic known as triangulation, which, by the way, if you have not seen my video on triangulation, I'm going to leave the link here. You really have to see it. But just to mention a couple of ways that they might triangulate is that they might tell you that someone said something negative behind your back. Maybe they were the ones that were talking with the other person saying something negative, but they take a tiny bit of truth and they mix it with a whole lot of lies to cause you to look at the other person in a negative light. Or they might exaggerate conflicts that you have with others to make you feel unsupported. You might mention to them something that you didn't like about somebody, and they blow it up and they act so concerned, causing you to think that it's way bigger than it really is. I was talking to a good friend recently who is in a relationship, and he said a good relationship is not based on never having conflict with somebody, but it's how you handle the conflict, how you handle your differences that can really determine how strong the relationship is. But a narcissist will notice a conflict that you have with somebody and they will make it so big and act as if that one conflict means that that relationship is bad or dangerous for you. And they'll have you burning bridges left and right. And as a result, over time, you'll find yourself pulling away from people that really care about you and have your best interests at heart. And even more destructive is the reality that this will fuel an insecurity in you that causes you to distrust those who were once close to you and to only use the narcissist's perception as who to get close to in the future. All of us have an inner compass, so to speak, an inner gut instinct, a self-trust, and the narcissist erodes at that and makes themselves your inner compass. The third tactic that narcissists use to isolate you from people that really care about you is their use of guilt and manipulation. Guilt is a powerful means of manipulation. And so what narcissists will often start doing if they see you getting close to someone else, it could even be in a friend circle, right? They see you getting closer to someone else. They might say things like, you don't care about me anymore, or I thought you really cared about our relationship, or you never have time for us anymore. Now, to be fair, I think everyone has said something similar at some point or another in our lives, right? To somebody else. So when does it become manipulation? It becomes manipulation when every single time that person is spending time with the other person, right? Maybe they are spending time with you and the other person, but every time they're spending time with the other person, you make them feel guilty. It's different if you haven't seen that person in a long time and you haven't spent time in a long time. It might be normal to say something like that. But if you use it to turn on that guilt every single time so that they abandon that relationship to only be with you, then it's being used as manipulation. You see, narcissists can't share. They live life with extreme polarity. Everything is black or white, all or nothing. They can't handle the fact that you can be with them and others as well. And so if you find that you're always feeling guilty as if you're doing something wrong by getting close to other people as well, then you might really want to pay attention to that. So those are 3 common tactics that narcissists use to isolate their targets. Again, they're through devaluing relationships, creating drama and triangulation, or guilt and manipulation, or a combination of all 3. But I want to be honest with you, knowing or having the knowledge that these are the tactics that narcissists use is not necessarily enough to help you to not get sucked into their drama. So even if you have this knowledge, here are 4 things that you need so you don't get sucked back in by a narcissist. And let me know below how strong you feel like you are with these 4 things. Okay, the first one is self-trust. Your ability to trust yourself even when somebody else is pointing left and you know that you're supposed to go right. Do you abandon yourself quickly and just follow what somebody else says? Or do you have a strong sense of self-trust? The second thing that's needed is your capacity to have guilt come up in your body. In other words, if somebody else provokes you to guilt, do you have the capacity to notice it without getting flung into a trauma response? And often the trauma response that a narcissist is trying to provoke you into is the fawn trauma response, where the guilt feels so uncomfortable that you suppress how you really feel and what you really think is right or wrong just to make them happy so you don't have to feel that in your body. That's an emotional flashback that a narcissist is provoking in you to cause you to act in a way that they want you to act. The third thing that you need inside of yourself so that you don't get sucked back in to a narcissistic relationship or an emotionally manipulative relationship is the ability to stay grounded and comfortable in your body when someone else is uncomfortable, when somebody else doesn't like your decision, doesn't agree with you. Are you able to handle their discomfort and stay grounded in you? Or again, do you abandon yourself because the discomfort is too much for you? And that leads me right into the fourth thing that you need to develop within yourself is the ability to have two perspectives and them to not necessarily always align. In other words, if you've been in narcissistic relationships for a long time, or if you grew up in those dynamics, you know that everyone was expected to have the same perspective. And so when you're having a different perspective than the narcissist, that can be very uncomfortable. And you might be inclined to think you need to prove your perspective to the other person. But do you have the ability to allow them to disagree without it causing you to go off course inside of yourself? So you're able to hold their perspective as different, your perspective, and that's okay. Those are 4 things that we need inside of ourselves so that we don't get sucked into those relationships. So it's the knowledge about them and the inner healing work that we do within ourselves that really allows us to heal and stay out of narcissistic relationships permanently. So if you're struggling with any of those 4 things that I mentioned, I invite you to come check out the School of Transformation, because that's what we focus on. In the School of Transformation, we don't focus on the narcissist as much as we focus on what's going on inside of us. Where is the trauma still stuck in us? And how can we heal and let go of patterns and tendencies that keep us stuck in unhealthy relationship dynamics? So if you're curious about the School of Transformation, I'll leave the link here for you to check it out and see if it's a good resource for you.